contracts for security? Any?
As of right now, no.
Have you had?
Yes, I have.
And what were they?
Working for the federal government?
Yes. Federal security contracts?
Yes.
What were they?
I'd be happy to disclose those if
I'd
the customer
appreciate
would.
in writing, if you would,
Sure.
if you would tell us the federal contracts that you've had in dealing with information security in the areas that you claim to be an expert in.
I would be happy to write that.
And Mr. Krush, I just want to ask you really briefly if you could tell us the security standards, compare those that are used for the federal government as to the private sector. You've alluded to that a bit. If you could just very quickly.
Sure. So one thing to understand, and just to go back to Mr. Gregg, I've also co-authored a book on, and we've taken over 10,000 pages of information from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, the Department of Defense instructions, the intelligence community directives, and also some of the SAP programs, and consolidated that. And that book's actually used in places such as Syracuse University to teach people that are actually want to understand this very rigorous federal process. I'm also a co-author of NIST Special Publication 853 Alpha. That's the process where we actually do the assessments per se. So
I trust your expertise. I just want to know the rigor of the standards for the federal government compared to the private sector.
Sure. So that's a great question, Ms. Edwards. One of the things to understand is that NIST Special Publication 853, starting at Revision 2, and we're now up to Revision 4, integrated all of the commercial standards. At Rev 3, so meaning, the most ISO, Carnegie Mellon, a lot of these organizations that had kind of best practices out there, they were integrated into that revision. By Revision 4, we've actually integrated the Department of Defense standards, the intelligence community standards, also a lot of standards that are kind of outside the realms. They're threat-based. Most, as you'll find, most auditing organizations don't look for those. So the depth and rigor compared from a commercial organization to what you'll get in the government, and I've worked on both sides. 50% of my contracts are with Fortune 50 and 100 companies. So I can tell you the depth and rigor that you implement on a federal information system, as it should be, is just much more intense than what you see in the commercial markets.
And is Healthcare.gov, is the rigor attached to Healthcare.gov any different from any of these other federal systems that you've indicated?
No, this process is the same across the U.S. government.
Thank you. So I wonder if the standards that you described are above, and I think you said this, are above those that you would find in the commercial sector.
I would say yes.
Thank you. Mr. Gregg, you mentioned some information and speculation about medical records vis-a-vis Healthcare.gov. Are you aware of any medical record that is maintained on Healthcare.gov?
No, the information is simply passed through.
Exactly. And so, no, is there any medical record, personal medical record contained on Healthcare.gov?
No.
Thank you. And then, Dr. Ponemon, just out of curiosity, you talked about your mother's experience, which just sounds really horrible, but she didn't experience identity theft through Healthcare.gov. Isn't that correct?
Absolutely not.
Right. Thank you.
Thank you.
I just wonder, Mr. Krush, if you could help me, if you will, of the experience that you've had in developing and working on federal information systems, is it your conclusion that you would feel safe in putting your personal information through Healthcare.gov?
Ms. Edwards, I've actually put that in my testimony. I would put my personal information on Healthcare.gov. I've said this more than once, and I continue to stand by that.
Thank you. And Mr. Kennedy, lastly, I want to go back to your federal work. I mean, that I can find disclosed. I know that you got a small business loan from the Small Business Administration for, quote, businesses that do not qualify for credit in the open market. Again, what is the other federal security work that you've done?
I'd be happy to disclose that in a written testimony.
Can you just give me an example right here on
I would
the
need
record?
to get permission from my customer. I work on non-disclosure agreements and confidentiality of information.
Okay.
Should I disclose my customer information to you?
What I would like to do, I'll write you a letter. Your financial disclosure that you've submitted in this record requires that. Did you put that in your financial disclosure?
No. No, listen, my experience
Did you-
no,
did you put
what
your-
question you asked me
let
was,
me-
did I have Federal experience in the federal
It's
market?
my time, Mr. Kennedy.
Yes, ma'am.
Did you put that financial disclosure information in the record as required by our committee?
I'm not required to put that in there.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.